Polybius. Polybius is the name of a slot machine, which in 1981 was simply adored by children from Portland. When they were taken away from the game, they began to feel nausea and headaches. Every week this machine was checked by mysterious people in black. They rewrote the hard drive data, didn't take the money and just left. The townspeople were sure that they were CIA officers, and they used automatic machines to control children's consciousness. Although most of this legend is not confirmed by anything, during the game marathon in Portland in 1981, one of the participants really became ill. A few days later, CIA officers actually took away several machines, citing gambling problems in the state. Bunny Man. They say that in 1904, an institution for mentally ill patients was closed, and during the transportation of patients to a new building, one of them was able to escape, as an accident occurred. It was a man named Bunny Man. They called him that because he wandered through the forest and ate rabbits, and left their bones and skulls on trees and bridges to frighten the local police. Do you think that's not true? Not really. In 1970, a couple of lovers were driving a car at night, and at some point a man in a rabbit costume threw an axe in their direction. 2 weeks later, the same man in a suit with an axe was spotted in the woods, but by the time the police arrived, no one could be found. Cropsey. This is the story of the Boogie Monast of State Island. There were rumors that a patient escaped from a mental hospital, an obsessive maniac who abducted children and took them to the ruins of the clinic, which was once his home. Witnesses always mentioned the fact that he had a hook instead of a hand. Many parents used this story as a horror story, wanting to scare children and protect them from strangers. In 1972, this legend came to life, and the boogeyman became real. His name was Andre Rand. He worked as a janitor at one of the local schools, and he always chose mentally disabled children as victims. He was arrested in connection with the disappearance of 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger, who suffered from Down syndrome. He was fired from his job and moved to the ruins of the school where he once worked. As a result, the police managed to prove his guilt in that case and in 4 more cases of missing children, but their bodies were never found. A thief from Maine. For years, visitors to a pond in Maine have complained that something strange was happening there. People began to notice the loss of various things. It wasn't a random pair of thefts, it was multiple thefts from different people. Food, flashlights and clothes were stolen from tourists. People wondered if it was the spirits of the forest who were so naughty, or maybe a thief was found in the forest by the pond. It turned out that it was a thief after all. In the year 2013, the police arrested Christopher Knight, who had been secretly living in the forest for 27 years and had been following tourists all this time. During the interrogation, he confessed to 40 thefts annually. To me, his main crime was not stealing at all, but secretly watching people. It's creepy. The Fallen Lawyer. I came across this story quite often on the internet, but I never believed in its authenticity until this moment. It was said that a lawyer lived in a tall building, who loved to show off and show guests how reliable his office was. Every time someone came to his office, he ran straight into the glass of the window and hit it, demonstrating the strength of the structure. It turns out that this lawyer is real, and his name was Harry Hoy. He was the main partner in his company and worked in an office on the 24th floor. On the 9th of June, 1993, law students came to visit him, and he decided to impress them with his focus. But over the years, the structure managed to weaken, and the poor guy flew out the window and died. When hotels and inns became the usual companions of city residents, there were a lot of stories about how guests found the bodies of murdered people under the beds or even in their mattresses in hotel rooms. These stories remained only horror stories until 1999, when in Colorado one couple actually slept on a mattress in which a body was hidden. The police did not want to spread much about it, but in the 2010 year a scandal broke out with the discovery of the body of Sonia Millbrook in a Las Vegas hotel, who was considered missing at that time. The killer turned out to be her boyfriend Lackett Moody. Many years ago, New Yorkers whispered that alligators lived in the sewers of the city. They say that one boy somehow flushed his pet alligator into the toilet and it settled in the drains. Years passed and once the same kid stuck his hand into the drain to get the ball, and he was immediately grabbed by a grown pet. No one wanted to believe it, because an alligator living under such a city is absurd. Or not. In 1959, Teddy May, the mayor of New York City at the time of talking about alligators, released his memoirs, in which he partially confirmed this urban legend. In 1935, he himself, in the company of several inspectors, saw alligators in the drains of New York. It took 2 years to completely get rid of the alligators. Secrets of Puebla. For many years, longer than many can imagine, residents of the city of Puebla in Mexico have been talking about secret tunnels that were built under the city by Spanish conquistadors in the 1500th years. More than 500 years have passed since then and these stories have become legends. People tried to find tunnels, but without success, and the myths remained myths. In the 2014 year, builders who were going to implement a new urban project stumbled upon an ancient tunnel. Employees of the local historical center conducted a check, and their assumptions were confirmed. It was the same tunnel that had been talked about in myths for 500 years. It is said that members of the Catholic Church used the tunnel to transport treasures and other property. Some of these underground tunnels are open to tourists, and you can see for yourself what was once only part of a terrible legend. Faceless Charlie is a story about a guy named Charlie, who received a severe electric shock, which led to the fact that his whole face was burned. It was said that the unfortunate man's face literally melted, and nothing remained of his eyes, nose and mouth. By some miracle, he survived and stayed in his hometown for the rest of his life, trying once again not to show his face to anyone. People talked about Charlie, but since no one had ever met him, the story seemed to be just a legend. So, this is the pure truth, except for the name. The poor guy's name was Raymond Robinson. Dog Boy. Many Arkansas residents know the legend of the boy all. People often gossiped about a boy covered in wool who lived in the town of Quitman. This story is definitely based on real events. Gerald Bettis was born in 1954 in the city of Quitman, and the neighbors always called him an evil dog, because the boy mocked animals and put terrible experiments on them. When he grew up, he switched to his parents. Gerald tormented them until his 27th birthday, when the body of his dead father was found in the house. The newspapers wrote that he died of an illness, but the residents of the city are sure that it was murder. The young man kept his mother in the house until the police took her away under the Witness Protection Program. His mother eventually testified against him, and Gerald was sentenced to life imprisonment. He died in prison a few years later.